Alright, Crim 15, let's knock out Chapter 8, Law and Legal Professionals. So we're going to talk a lot about the law, why we have laws, and kind of a lot about lawyers, attorneys, and stuff in this particular chapter. So here are your learning objectives. Let me go back really quick. Learning objectives, you can pause if you would like to stop with the learning objectives. So, why do we have laws? Most of you have probably taken a criminology class before, so there's a lot of reasons why we have laws. To administer justice, to enforce rights, a tool to get people to change their behavior, to educate people. There are different types of laws as well. There are certain types of behaviors that, a lot of us would say are inherently bad. Murder, rape, battery, things like that, assault. Those are things that most of us would probably agree are inherently bad. And then we have other laws that are put into place because we, as a society, say that this behavior is bad. And let's just use something like prostitution as an example. Some of you would say, prostitution, is it really bad? Paying someone for sex. Some of you would say it's horrible, it's awful, terrible behaviors. And others would say, what's the big deal? Using drugs. Is it inherently bad? I don't know, not for me to say. But there's a difference between certain things that are inherently bad and certain things that are bad because we, as a society, have decided that they should be forbidden. Speeding, driving fast. Is it inherently bad? Probably not. I hope not, because if so, then I'm in trouble, because I tend to speed. But anyways, so natural law is something that would be kind of inherently bad, as opposed to this positivist law would be something that we as a society have decided should be against the law because it benefits us somehow. Then we have Good Samaritan laws. You've probably heard of this. You know, you walk by and you see somebody in harm's way and you step in to try and assist them. So why do we have laws? To prevent people from being harmed, to prevent, to keep people from being offended. Whew, that's quite a challenge in today's society. To prevent harm to the actor, like the person making us wear seat belts, to keep morals in place, like limiting gambling, and to benefit others, so that we don't let chemical companies dump toxic waste in your front yard, things like that. It prevents offensive behavior. What's offensive behavior? I don't know. It's different to different people, but things like, someone going and pooping in your front yard. That would be offensive to me. I would not be happy if someone decided to take a big dump in my front yard. Public lewdness. Some of you don't like it when your neighbor's dog barks for hours on end. I have a neighbor whose dog barks for hours on end. Drives me nuts. But anyways, so there's other, offensive behaviors. In Fresno, gosh, it was a couple years ago now, there was a law that went into place that was enacted to prohibit homeless people from camping, which is interesting because your book does mention it, so obviously we're not the only city that did that. But that was apparently offensive to some people. And again, if I'm a business owner, I don't want a homeless person camping in front of my business because what's going to happen? Do you want to go into a shop where there's a homeless person camped out in front? I probably would avoid that shop, so, I can understand the frustration of the business owners. So, anyways, these are other, behaviors where laws have to be put into place because, because people will do stuff that offends other people. Again, preventing harm to yourself. I'll be honest, these kind of laws sort of frustrate me sometimes because I feel like the government is telling us that we're too dumb to know that we should wear a seatbelt, so they force us to wear a seatbelt. Yeah, I wear a seatbelt. I don't ride a motorcycle, so I don't have to worry about a helmet. Speed limits, okay. Maybe I do need the government to tell me. Okay. Drug laws, yeah, we obviously need those because otherwise, well, you know what, it doesn't really matter because people use drugs anyways. But anyways, there are laws put into place to keep us from killing ourselves. Blah, 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 blah. It's kind of trickier when they're talking about morals. And in society, morals change. As we know, 100 years ago, it was illegal to be married and have sex with someone other than your spouse. That was called adultery, and you could probably have been charged with a crime for adultery 100 years ago. Now, I mean, if we charged every person who cheated on their spouse with adultery, I can't even imagine how full our courts would be. So it's really hard to keep up with the whole moral stance. I mean, even 10 years ago, it was illegal to smoke marijuana in California, and now recreational use of marijuana is legal if you are over 21 and you are in your home. And pretty soon, I'd be willing to bet that you'll be able to smoke it at bars and stuff like that too. I don't know. We'll see. But the whole concept of what's moral and ethical has changed, and it continues to change. The paradigms of law. It's a fundamental view of the world around us. Model of how ideas relate to one another, forming a conceptual model of the world around us. Okay, so we're going to talk about a consensus paradigm, a conflict paradigm, and a pluralist paradigm. Okay, so consensus means like that we're all getting along and everything is working well together. So a consensus paradigm basically is a belief that the law serves as a tool of unification. I think this is a really good, really easy way to describe this one right now is face masks. So a lot of people, and I'm of course recording this during the pandemic, but people who are pro-maskers, because we know there are anti-maskers as well. Pro-maskers are will walk around wearing their masks, and that is one of their things that they show. That's a kind of a unification type thing. I would say even a vaccine card or proof that they got their COVID vaccines. Tool of unification. These are people that are like-minded. They're consensus. They're working together. It's a compilation of the do's and don'ts that they all agree upon. The we-ness, it is we are all together. We are working together on doing the right thing. Okay? Consensus, all working together. Okay, so we'll say these are all the pro-masker people. Okay, you know where I'm going with this now. Conflict. Now, these are the people who are not in agreement, and the laws are being put into place so that they can be, let me see here, so that they can be pointed out. These are your anti-maskers, your anti-vaxxers right now. So these are it's almost like the laws are being put into place so that the people who are not in agreement can be pointed out. I guess that kind of makes sense. The laws are repressive, a tool of the powerful, and not value neutral. The pluralists basically say that the definition of the crime can change over time. So that behavior changes. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So again, we're kind of talking about now, we're going to kind of move on a little bit more to legal defenses. And one of the probably most significant problems that we see in the criminal justice system today is poverty. And whether we like to believe that it is true or not, indigent people, people who are very poor, are much more likely to be involved in the criminal justice system. The system of indigent defense in the country is extremely underfunded, and this is absolutely true. Funding public defenders adequately would cost money initially, but might reduce mass incarceration. Everyone does have a right to have an attorney. Do they have the right to have a good attorney? Do they have the right to have an attorney that doesn't have 500 other cases that they're working on? No. So indigent clients and clients, I guess is the best word to use. The numbers are overwhelming. Is it a crime to be poor? Well, not exactly, but you'll remember I just told you that the city of Fresno has passed a couple years ago an ordinance where it's illegal to camp. So if you don't have a house or a place to live, where do you go? A lot of you might say, well, there are some homeless programs. And you know what? There are some programs. There are some places that the homeless and the indigent can go. A lot of them either A, don't want to go there because a lot of times they have to follow very specific rules if they're going to go into those programs. A lot of these people are drug addicted. A lot of them are mentally ill and choose to live on the streets, or B, are unaware of these programs. So is it a crime to be poor? I don't know, maybe a question we all should ask ourselves. Okay, so then we're talking about the attorneys themselves. And I've seen this happen before. I worked in a courtroom. I was lucky enough, and I really enjoyed it actually, to work in a courtroom for about 8 years as the probation officer assigned in a juvenile courtroom. And watching the attorneys go at it, most of the attorneys were really good people and good attorneys, and they did good work. But every now and then you'd get some that all they really wanted to do was win a case. They didn't care about the client. They didn't care about anything else but beating the other attorney. You know, you have your prosecutor and your defense attorney, and they just wanted to beat the other person. It was a game. It was really a game. Or, when it says bureaucratic justice, or it was a bureaucracy. The public defender would come in, and the DA, to be honest with you, the prosecutor, would come in with a huge rolling suitcase full of files. And this is, I worked in the juvenile world, but in the adult world, they might have upwards of 100 cases a day in an arraignment court. Can you imagine trying to adequately represent 100 people in one day? How can anyone do that effectively? It's just, it is literally like an assembly line. So it's just bureaucracy. It's you move them in and out as fast as you can, and you do the best you can in the 30 seconds that you are allotted with each client. And it's not the attorney's fault. They do what they can with the time they have. They also are working, like this says here, with the presumption of guilt. It is unfortunate. Most cases, they're trying to really work out a plea bargain before even getting to know the client or work on the case, because they don't have time to really get to know what's going on in the case, because they have 99 other cases to work on. Very sad. And this is all unfortunately sad but true. The wedding cake model. If you think of in your mind of what a wedding cake looks like, it's small at the top and big at the bottom. That's kind of what they're trying to describe here with the wedding cake model. There's got a bunch of low-level cases at the bottom and a couple of high-level serious cases at the top. That's really all there. I don't know why they call it the wedding cake model, but there's a few serious cases at the top and a bunch of low-level cases at the bottom. Okay, so when you are an attorney, what kind of relationship should you have with your client? That's another question to be asked. Legal agent, should you be moral or legal? Should you care as a defense attorney if your client is guilty? Should you represent them to the best of your ability at all costs, even if they're guilty? Should your loyalties be at all costs to the client, or should it be to the law? So, a lot of people will, and again, another thing I've seen happen, people will pay thousands and thousands of dollars for a private attorney, and the private attorney will do their best to at least make it look like they've earned their money by dragging cases out, promoting the client's interests, you want an attorney who is going to fight for you, but you also need to have an attorney who's going to be ethical. And a lot of times those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. Interesting. So again, I guess I ask a question, and I'm going to kind of just leave it out there. Should the attorney that you hire defend you at all costs, or should they be moral? So this is what Cohen thinks. He thinks, don't treat people merely as the means to winning a case. Treat similar people similarly. Don't deceive the court. Make reasonable personal sacrifices for morally good causes. Don't financially support or profit from your wrongful acts, or from wrongful acts. Avoid harming others while representing your client. Interesting. Be loyal to your client, and don't betray confidences. Make moral decisions. Act consistently upon them. Some people would say that Cohen's principles are naive, and existing rules already prevent unscrupulous acts. Decisions regarding justice and morality are so subjective that it's impossible for them to be judged, and a lawyer acting as a moral agent would forfeit client trust by substituting his or her own moral code for the client's. So, here are just some other comments about attorneys, and they can only abandon their clients for these reasons. And you can read those. You don't need me to read the whole thing for you. I don't see it. I personally hadn't seen it happen very often. I have seen some attorneys do some really shady things. Attorney-client privilege prevents compelling attorneys to disclose confidential information about their clients, except during these times. And then here are some ethical guidelines for judges. Culture and ethics. Model code for professional responsibility dictated that lawyers should be temperate and dignified. I'm sorry, I kind of laugh because I have seen some attorneys be just go full on yell, scream, cry, cuss, just lie, do horrible things in court before. I've had an attorney call me names on the record in court before. I've seen attorneys do some horrible things. So and again, I've seen some attorneys be amazingly wonderful people too. So, as a probation officer working in a courtroom, I've seen the whole gamut of, I remember there was a prosecutor that we worked with, a DA, and he got fired from the DA's office because he was stealing or embezzling money from the DA's union, and he's now a prominent defense attorney in town. So it doesn't matter. You can still be an attorney even if you get arrested for stealing from your own union. But anyways, do you think people should be forced to help another person in need? This is going back to the Good Samaritan laws. Anyways, there's chapter 8.